Hello everyone. In this video, I'm speaking directly to Canadians, proud and patriotic Canadians that are concerned about our country. Now, like myself, most of you have been exposed to the news, the economic turmoil, the uncertainty that we're facing these days as a direct result of actions by the United States. Now, most of us hear the news and we hear the stories and we read about what our politicians are doing to try and help Canada through this time. And many of us have the mindset, well, we'll just let our politicians handle it because what can we do as individuals? Well, in this video, I want to talk about just that. But first, I want to outline how serious a problem we are facing right now in one specific sector in our economy. And then I'll tell you what we can do as individuals to help Canada through this. And I'm going to show you a little bit of data while I tell this story. Now, the threat that we face right now, and we are very vulnerable to this one, some of our industries have been able to pivot and set up new supply chains and find new customers in other countries for our products. But this particular industry is vulnerable, and that's the auto industry in Canada, which is the second biggest contributor to Canada's GDP. Now, Donald Trump and the Americans have specifically targeted this industry because it's vulnerable. Now, let me explain this, and then I'll tell you what we can do about it. This chart lists all the countries in the world ranked by vehicle exports as of 2024. And it's no surprise to see Germany, China, and Japan in the top 4 on that list. It might be a little bit of a surprise to you to see Mexico as the third biggest exporter of vehicles in the world. Now, leaving Mexico aside for 1 second, Germany, China, and Japan are the 3 top powerhouses in the automobile industry in the world. And I just highlighted the value of their exports in thousands of US dollars. So for example, Japan here exports $151 billion of automobiles to the rest of the world. All 3 of those countries import less than they export. And I'm highlighting the numbers here for, again, Germany, China, and Japan. This is a value of imported, value of exported, all vehicles, all parts, everything associated with the auto industry. Those 3 countries run a trade balance, which is a big surplus for all 3 of them. And that's because they can manufacture vehicles that are competitive around the world and they have lots of customers. Now, the United States has one of the world's least competitive automobile industries. And let me make the distinction here, not the world's least competitive automobile companies, because a lot of US companies have chosen to manufacture in some of these countries. For example, Tesla's biggest manufacturing factory is in China, and they contribute to the value of exported goods from China. I'm talking about the United States as a country is very uncompetitive when it comes to the automobile industry. The United States exports $144 billion of value in the auto business, but they import much more than that, close to $400 billion value of imports. And that leaves them with a massive trade deficit of almost $250 billion. Now, why is Donald Trump imposing tariffs and targeting Canada's automobile industry so focused? Why is he doing that? Because Canada represents the easiest target for the United States for them to improve this negative trade balance. And that's because the Canadian automobile industry is heavily integrated with the United States. And if you look at Canada, our automobile industry in 2024 exported about $60 billion in value. And almost all of those exports went to the United States. Canada exports very few vehicles and parts and anything to do with the auto industry to anyone but the United States. And so this is a very vulnerable and easy target for the Americans to attack. They simply will put tariffs on our industry so that our vehicles are more expensive for them to buy, because when those vehicles are imported into the United States, they'll be subject to whatever Donald Trump's tariff is at the time. I believe it's 25% now, and that tariff could increase. And the goal for the United States is to drive this number down to 0. That's what Donald Trump has said. We don't want to buy cars from you. We don't want you to be manufacturing cars to sell us. We want the companies that are manufacturing these and exporting them to us, we want them to move their production to the United States. So the United States plan is to make this $60 billion or so go down as far as it can so that their import number here, this 390 billion in imports that they make, that number will come down by exactly the amount they reduce our exports. If they can destroy our auto industry so that we are no longer capable of building and exporting cars in Canada, this $58 billion worth of exports, which goes directly to the United States, will not have to be imported by them. And this $391 billion will drop by that $58 billion. Are you following the math? And then their trade imbalance will also drop. They will improve their financial situation by destroying ours. Make no mistake, that's their plan. No matter how hard Canadian officials try and negotiate, no matter how many ads we run on US media trying to convince them that we're really their friends and they should treat us nicely. Now, the reason this is such a critical problem for Canada, not just the people that work in the business in Ontario, but for the whole Canadian economy, is because unlike a lot of other businesses, the auto sector, based on which models we produce here, it's very difficult for that sector to pivot and find other customers somewhere else in the world. It's not like other commodities that we can just pivot and sell to other customers. We can look for the highest price from another country. These are products that are specifically made, integrated with the United States for the North American market. And that's why the United States is targeting our industry, and that's why they won't back down. And we have to listen and believe what their president says and what their trade negotiators say, that there's no scenario in which they'll drop the tariffs. In fact, there's potential for those tariffs to be increased next year when CUSMA, USMCA, a big portion of CUSMA, USMCA, and before that NAFTA, and before that the Auto Pact, a big part of that deal is rules governing the trade in automobiles, how integrated our automobile trade is with the United States. That's all up for negotiations next year, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Americans even increase the tariffs. So this may leave you feeling as a Canadian, wow, we don't have a very good bargaining position. And I'm here to tell you that it's the exact opposite. We have much more power than all of you might think. And now let me tell you what we can do, what our secret power is. And I'm going to speak directly to Doug Ford here when I tell you. What is our secret power? Well, the fact is we hold all the cards. What cards are you talking about? This card. These are the cards we hold. Your wallet. We all have wallets, and we have to use our wallets. Let me explain with data again. We go back to this same chart, and I highlighted this number here that Canada exports $58 billion of automobile value, mainly to the United States in 2024. Well, there's another number. We imported much more than that, $90 billion worth of value. And a lot of that is imports from the United States. So the United States hasn't thought this through. They haven't thought this through completely because they don't want us to manufacture the cars in Canada and export them to the United States. They would rather this number goes to zero so that they can build those cars and they can increase their exports and sell them to us. But we don't have to buy them. Look at this number here, $90 billion worth of imports. Most of that value coming from the United States. The United States only exports $144 billion in total, and most of their exports go to Canada, a big portion of this $90 billion, and Mexico, a large portion of this $65 billion. The United States is not competitive in the rest of the world, and countries like Germany and China and Japan do not import US vehicles. We are their market. What they're trying to do is knock down our exports and try and make us increase our imports. But our trump card that we can use to retaliate is our wallets. We don't have to buy vehicles from the United States. In fact, when you add up 40 million wallets, 40 million Canadian wallets, we have the ability to crush the US auto business. We have the ability to just absolutely destroy the United States auto sector simply by boycotting their cars. And we have other choices. We can buy vehicles that are manufactured by the same companies, the same US companies, but that are manufactured in Canadian plants. And there's many different models that are manufactured in Canada. There are also cars we can buy that are manufactured in Japan. There's cars that we can buy that are manufactured in Mexico. There's cars that we can buy that are manufactured in Germany. And those of you who are still thinking, well, really, can we? How much of a difference can we make? It's such a big industry. Well, the United States tourism industry is a big industry. And we, Canadians, represented the biggest block of foreign tourists that visited the United States. And we boycotted traveling to the United States, and visitors from Canada to the United States have dropped 30 to 40% and crushed the profit margin of the US tourism industry. Canadians have also en masse boycotted the purchase of American wine and spirits to the tune of minus 97%. And before we did that, Canada was the #1 export market for US wine. We've crushed that industry. And those industries in Canada, the wine industry, the Okanagan, Niagara, and places in Nova Scotia, the wine industry is booming. The Canadian tourism industry is booming. Why? Because we voted with our wallets and we chose Canada. And we can do the exact same thing with the auto sector. You have to have an appreciation for what these numbers mean. The value of imported auto goods into Canada is $90 billion. Look at the rest of the countries in the world. That's higher than China, Mexico, Japan, South Korea, Spain, Belgium, France. This number is only behind the United States and Germany because Canada is a very affluent country. We buy a lot of cars. And our industry is integrated with the United States. Parts go back and forth and back and forth. This value, $90 billion, and remember, most of that value comes from the United States, imported from the United States, represents a huge chunk of their total export value. We hold all the cards. 40 million Canadians hold 90 billion cards. And when the United States attacks this number, our exports, all we have to do is retaliate by attacking this number. So the new movement is hashtag boycott USA cars, hashtag boycott US cars, hashtag boycott US autos. And believe me, if we got those import numbers down 20, 30, 40%, it would crush the profitability of the US auto sector. And they'd be begging us, because we're their customers, they would be begging us to come back. But this isn't all about just crushing their industry. This is about supporting our industry. And the added effect here, the other side of the story is, if we pivot and make the conscious decision when you go to the auto dealer and you're looking at cars and you ask them, which ones are manufactured in Ontario? I only want to look at those ones. Maybe you'll convince yourself to buy a Honda CR-V, which is manufactured in Ontario, rather than some other model that's manufactured in the US. And if we do that en masse, that will represent a boom in sales of Canadian-built cars. And a lot of those factories, mainly in Ontario, will have to increase their shifts, maybe expand, maybe think about building new models in Canada that Canadians demand. If we just get it through the Americans' heads that we're not going to be pushed around and we can vote with our wallets and we can have the same effect on the auto industry that we had on their tourism and their wine export industries, they will be shaking in their boots. We're integrated and they suffer from the same thing we do. They are not in a position to pivot easily as well. They can't just start selling their cars to Japan and Germany and China. Those countries don't want American cars. Whether they like it or not, they need us as customers. And the customer is always right, especially when the customer just leaves this in his pocket and doesn't want to give them any money. Now, what I'm hoping from all of you, fellow patriotic and proud Canadians, is to share this video to everyone you can on all the social media sites that you're on, whether you're on X or Blue Sky or Facebook or whatever sites you're on. Just share the video. Get the message out. Hashtag boycott US cars. If you live in Ontario and you work in the auto sector, copy the link to this video and send it to your provincial member of parliament or send it to Doug Ford. Get your politicians on side. And I know that if we got Doug Ford on side, he would be the biggest Captain Ontario and Captain Canada cheerleader that exists in our whole country. He was the first guy to immediately hit back at the Americans when they first started this tariff nonsense, pulling US wine and spirits off the shelves. Well done, Doug. Telling the people of Ontario to try a staycation this summer and spend your money locally. Well done, Doug. Now let's get them on board with this. Let's get our politicians to spread this message. Even the thought of a grassroots, homegrown Canadian boycott from proud and patriotic Canadians, a la wine business, a la tourism business, will get the Americans shaking in their boots. I kid you not, they will be. When they're on television, they won't want to admit it. They'll still be arrogant and tough and dismissive. But when they're not in front of the camera, they will be petrified of losing our money. Because our money, the money we spend on their products, is their profit. So mark my words. Don't underestimate the power you have as a consumer and the power that we collectively have if we do this together as Canadians. Next to purchasing a house, purchasing a vehicle is the second biggest expenditure that most Canadians will make. So think about this. Why do you want to work hard in this country and make your money? Or maybe you're older and you're collecting benefits from the government. You're receiving your Canada pension plan. Why would you want to carefully save that money for years and years? And when it comes time to making a big purchase decision, why would you want to just hand over that cash to help the US economy when our economy is under threat by them? We need to wake up and stop underestimating ourselves and realize the power that we have. So that's the message that I wanted to leave with all of you. And I'll ask you again to share this video with as many people as you can so that we can try and get some traction here. Subscribe to this channel so that we can get the numbers up and make it more relevant on YouTube. And I can reach more people with this patriotic, proud type Canadian message. Stay strong, my fellow Canadians, and realize that we, the true North, strong and free, when we work together, there's nothing that we can't do. Thanks for watching my video, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next one.